Hello, welcome to my channel everybody. So I think October has actually been a record reading month for me this year. I'll need to look over my other statistics, but I think normally I read somewhere around maybe 4 to 6, so averaging around 5-ish books a month. And in October I finished 8 books, which to me is quite a lot. I know some of you guys probably read a lot more, but to me 8 books is a lot. And I think it was really helped by doing the Charms Extra Credit readathon, because during that week I actually started and finished 3 books, and I started another 1 book that I haven't finished yet. So let's have a look at the books I read in October. And so I decided to try out something in my bullet journal to track how much I'm reading, and I'd seen someone else do this pages read spread. And so this is what mine looked like for October. Actually, on this day, it was so long that I needed to, add another line. And unfortunately, after the readathon finished, I completely forgot to do any tracking. But so the colours kind of denote the different books I read. So you can kind of tell, I don't know, when I've only read a tiny bit in a certain book, or whether there have been times when I just read loads and loads and loads in a given book. And it's actually been really, really fun taking note of this, because it's kind of made me realize how I always think that I read so many books at one time, which is sort of true, but actually at a given moment I tend to only read around 2 or 3 books, but then I jump between different 2 or 3 books, if that makes sense. So anyway, I'll tell you what the books are that I actually did read in October. So most of the books that I read actually were electronic, so either audiobooks or ebooks. And so one of the physical books that I read was this one. This Is Going to Hurt by Adam Kay, with the subtitle Secret Diaries of a Junior Doctor. And so it follows Adam Kay over the course of his training as a doctor with the NHS in England, and the different placements he has in different hospitals. And so he works as an obstetrician, gynecologist, something like that. So he's on the maternity wards, or just generally female health. And it's I don't know how to describe the book. It's really emotional in a sense, because obviously there are lots and lots of highs where he's actually saving people's lives. He's saving babies, he's saving mums. He describes these great heights where, he's like, this person would have died if I hadn't been there. And obviously that's utterly amazing. But then he's also describing these really, really bad lows where he's just shattered, where he's just working such long hours, where his relationship is really, really suffering because he's just not home, and he keeps having to cancel, dinner dates or holidays or going to friends' weddings and things like that. And it really, really takes a toll on his life, obviously. And so some chapters actually were really hard to read, because obviously, this being a hospital, things didn't actually always turn out well, right? And it's a really important book, I think, particularly, seeing how the NHS is actually quite strapped for money sometimes, and they're not getting the funding they need, and they're completely overworked so often, and seeing what the life of someone working in that institution is like, and the sacrifices he's making. When he's deciding between, should I do this operation in a way that might be quicker, but also might leave the patient with a bigger scar, a longer hospital stay, things like that, or should I do the longer one, but then miss the dinner date? And I think these are really, really difficult decisions, obviously, in a sense. I mean, I like how I think he's generally tried to choose the more moral one, the more, what would be better for the patient. But I do wonder sometimes if what we're asking of these junior doctors is actually way, way more than we should be asking of people. And it's made me really, really appreciate all the services that people in the NHS are giving to their patients. So yes, This Is Going to Hurt. It's a raw book. But I really, really enjoyed this, even though it was really hard to read. At times anyway. At other times it was absolutely hilarious. As Stephen Fry says in the little blurb here, says, painfully funny. Yeah, that is pretty true. And so the other physical book that I finished in October was Descender Volume 1, which is a graphic novel about a little companion robot, this one here, who wakes up after being asleep or unconscious, I don't know what you call it for a robot, for 10 years, during which time humanity was attacked by robots which are very similar and related to this one. And because humanity was attacked, they basically outlawed these kinds of robots. And so it's following his story, it's following the people who originally built the robots, and it's quite scary at times, because it's, you know, showing how these robots are being culled and thrown into big pits and all that. And yeah, it's quite an interesting idea. I unfortunately didn't like it quite as much as I'd hoped to, because I always like questions about AI and humanity and AI and how we interact and things like that. But unfortunately the book didn't quite live up to my expectations. So I think, I don't really do star ratings, but I guess this would be like a 3-star, something like that. So, yeah. So then on to some of the audiobooks that I listened to in October, which were actually quite a lot. So during the Charms Extra Credit Readathon, I was listening to City of Ghosts by Victoria Schwab, which is a middle grade book about a girl who can actually see ghosts. And her parents are ghost hunters, so they have a TV show and they talk a lot about ghosts, but they actually can't see, you know, real ghosts, whereas she can. And so her parents have this new show which is taking place in Edinburgh, and she's kind of exploring the city of Edinburgh with all the ghosts around it. And it's a really lovely story. It's kind of a nice Halloween-y thing to read if, like me, you don't like really terrifying horror things and you just want to have the little kind of creepy ghosty kind of thing like that. So I really enjoyed the book for that. It's probably not my general kind of thing to read, because I don't really read a lot of middle grade. It's just not really been something that I've been drawn to, but it was a really nice thing to try. It was just really lovely to kind of, you know, follow this. I think she's like 11 or 12, and it was just really cute how she has this friend of hers who actually is a ghost, and they kind of go between this world and the one beyond the veil, and it's just, yeah, it was just a really lovely story. I also listened to 2 audiobooks which are both about schizophrenia, which I totally didn't plan to do, but it just kind of happened that they were both available on my local Overdrive. And so the first of these was When Elephants Fly, which follows the protagonist, Lily, who is 18 years old and whose mum had paranoid schizophrenia and actually tried to kill Lily, or well, fly off the roof with her when Lily was 7 years old. And so, since this has quite a large genetic component, Lily now has this 12-year plan to get her through the ages of 18 to 30, when schizophrenia is most likely to begin showing signs. And so this plan involves basically no alcohol, no boyfriends, no stress, kind of avoiding any sort of emotional upheaval, which might trigger the schizophrenia. And this doesn't go quite as planned, because Lily has this journalist, I don't know if it's a summer job or this job that she does as a journalist. And so one of the projects that she works on takes her to the local zoo, where she witnesses the birth of a baby elephant. However, she also witnesses the quite traumatic incident where the mother of the baby elephant tries to kill the newborn baby. And obviously that brings back a lot of emotions for her, like for Lily. And so then she tries to figure out how she can rescue this baby elephant, and what it means to her to make a sacrifice for something greater than herself. And so it was a really, really emotional story. I actually remember crying at the end of it, because it's just so intense, and so it has such really interesting ideas in there about, you know, having something that is bigger than one's own worries, and Lily's worries about her mental health and, you know, trying to avoid any stress. And then obviously this totally doesn't work with trying to rescue this baby elephant. It's obviously quite a stressful thing to do. And so yet she goes on this kind of whole journey of exploring what it means to her, you know, to be aware of this risk of the schizophrenia hanging over her, which I think she's really worried about, and she kind of keeps trying to check up on herself, check whether she's still okay. And the book really, really beautifully describes this journey of growth, I would call it, where she's going from trying to keep everything under control and making sure that, you know, she's completely calm, she has no stress, she takes this kind of test to check that she's still healthy and all that, to maybe a more balanced way where she's kind of aware that, you know, life doesn't always work out as planned. So I really enjoyed this book. I would highly recommend it as even just as something, you know, to explore what schizophrenia is like, because it has some very interesting, you know, descriptions of that, and yeah, I would really recommend this book, I think. And then the other book that I read about schizophrenia, or rather listened to, was Words on Bathroom Walls, which follows the character Adam, who has recently been diagnosed with schizophrenia. And so he is just starting a new school where nobody knows about his schizophrenia. And he's also, at the same time, starting a new drug which seems to be really helping him. And so obviously, having just started a new school, he doesn't really want people to know about it as well, and he kind of tries to keep it a secret. Also to his new best friend. And it's kind of interesting how this book explores, you know, how he's trying to hide his illness, and how the drug is kind of working but then not working too well anymore, and just the inner life of someone who is having hallucinations, who is experiencing the world in a very different way from those around him, and how maybe trying to keep this a secret isn't always that great an idea. So I'll just leave it at that. It's a really fantastic book. Again, I would also really recommend this. I enjoyed it slightly less than When Elephants Fly, but maybe just because it's a very different setting, and it's in a school setting, and I think the protagonist also was quite a bit younger. I think he was probably about 14, 15, 16, something like that. But I still would really recommend this as a description of what schizophrenia is like for someone actually living through it, actually kind of, you know, whenever he meets someone going, is this a real person or am I just hallucinating them? So yeah. And so the last audiobook that I listened to was Neil deGrasse Tyson's Astrophysics for People in a Hurry, which is a lovely little book. I don't know, it's about 2 or 3 hours as an audiobook. And it is narrated by Neil deGrasse Tyson himself, which is amazing. And so he's talking about, well, astrophysics. So all of astrophysics in terms of literally starting with the Big Bang, going through all the different types of particles that exist in the universe, all the different processes that took place, you know, from the Big Bang through to the first stars, and, you know, all that. And then also, you know, how the chemicals that we have on Earth are formed in different stars and environments and supernovae, and how we have dark matter, which is, I actually made a video about talking some more about Neil deGrasse Tyson's book for Dark Matter Day, which was on the 31st of October, so I'll link that up here as well. And I really enjoyed this. I was a little bit, I don't know, a little bit worried at the beginning about reading it, because I did my PhD in astrophysics, and then I decided to leave academia, and I still quite miss it, but I actually find it really difficult sometimes to engage with it. It's kind of like when you really miss something and you want to have it around, but then also when you have it around, you kind of miss it some more because it's not quite how it used to be. So that's kind of how things have felt for me in astronomy and astrophysics recently. And so I was kind of, a bit scared of picking up this book. But then actually having it read by Neil deGrasse Tyson and kind of experiencing all this enthusiasm and all this amazing stuff that I'd kind of, little bits of it I'd kind of forgotten, you know. And it was just really lovely to be reminded of why I love astrophysics as well. And so I'm really, I guess, grateful almost for having been, for having picked up this book, because it actually reminded me that even though I might not be working in academia anymore, it's totally okay. I can totally read books like this. And yeah, I'm just really happy to have found this book. I would really recommend it, whether you're a scientist yourself, whether you're interested in this. It's just a really fantastic book, so yes. And lastly, there are 2 books that I read on my Kindle. And the first one of this I also read for the Charms Extra credit, which was Jodi Picoult's A Spark of Light, so that's her most recent book. And it is set in a hostage situation in a women's health clinic, which is obviously quite a tense situation. And so it's it's written in a really fascinating way because it's actually kind of told backwards. So the first chapter starts at 5 p.m. and then the second chapter is at 4 p.m. And so it kind of goes backwards in time until the morning of this day and kind of explores how all the people got there. So whether they're there for an abortion, whether they're there for contraception, or whether they're there because they're the shooter. And so what I really, really love about Jodi Picoult's books is that she always tries to explore things not just from one perspective, but from, I guess, kind of all possible viewpoints. And so in this book in particular, she really tries to explore, you know, why are the people there who are having an abortion, for example, or why are the protesters outside there, you know, that are protesting against people having abortions? Why is the shooter there? You know, what is his backstory? What is the story of the doctor who is performing the abortions? And very interestingly, so in the afterword to the book, she's kind of explaining how she came up with the characters, and she mentioned that she actually met an abortion doctor who was very, very similar to the one portrayed in the book, who is also a devout Catholic. And so she's kind of explaining what his journey was to come to this profession. And it was just a really, really interesting read for me. Obviously, so it's set in America, and obviously their access to women's health is a lot more difficult than here in Europe. And I was actually genuinely shocked to learn that in the state in America where this is set, which I think was Mississippi, there is only one clinic offering abortions, which to me really doesn't make sense. I think, you know, particularly also when that's in you know, conjunction with having real difficulty trying to get access to contraception, that just makes no sense to me. It's kind of, well, if you don't want people to have abortions, then maybe you should provide contraception. So as usual, I love all of Jodi Picoult's books, so I really enjoyed this one as well. And so the last book that I read on my Kindle, I absolutely loved, and I don't want to say I didn't expect it, but I guess I was a little bit hesitant because it was Hank Green's An Absolutely Remarkable Thing. And so I'd read John Green's books and I really enjoyed them. Yes, I think they're really awesome books. And I kind of thought, well, you know, sorry mate, but just because you're John Green's brother does not necessarily mean that you can write. I was so wrong. That book is amazing. It's a little bit hard actually to, you know, summarize it in a sense, but so I'll give it a go, but I might be missing some things here because it feels like a really, really complex book that touches on so many things of what modern society is like. So it follows the main protagonist, April May, as she discovers this big statue standing in New York in the middle of the night. And so her and her friend make a video about the statue. She then goes home, goes to sleep, and the next morning the video's been uploaded, and I don't remember how many views it has, but a lot of views, and everybody wants to now talk to her about this and ask her opinion and invite her to interviews, invite her to talk shows, all sorts of, you know, crazy internet celebrity fame. And the next thing that happens is that they figure out that these statues, which she's named Carl, actually have appeared all over the world. And not only this, they've literally instantaneously occurred all over the world, but they also seem to be made of materials that don't really exist like this on Earth. So then this whole question comes up of, what are these Carls? Are they aliens? Are they trying to, you know, take over the world? Are they trying to destroy the world? Are they friendly little aliens? What are they? They're not in any way communicating or nothing, right? They're just standing there. And so then I won't go into any more spoilers, but what the book then continues, or what the book then goes on to explore, is how people react to, well, an intrusion, an invasion, a foreign object kind of thing, and how these two opposing camps start to be, you know, building themselves up. On one hand, the people that are saying they're totally fine, they're just, you know, friendly visitors, we should, you know, get to know them, we should, you know, be nice to them and trusting and all that. And on the other side, the camp that is kind of saying they're dangerous, we don't know who they are, we don't know what their plans are, we don't know if they're literally out to destroy us. And again, I won't go into any spoilers about the book itself, but I thought it was so fascinating how, particularly in this age now where we have basically instant communication worldwide, where we have all these platforms whether that's YouTube or any kind of other fora, and we so often fall into these black and white groups, the ones that are for and the ones that are against. And then it doesn't become about people anymore, it just becomes about my opinion and your opinion, and since I'm right, you must be wrong. And it was just so amazing to read this, and how he's describing April May's slow, I don't know, I don't want to call it a descent, but this kind of, you know, you could see how she was becoming more and more entrenched in her opinion and in her way of thinking about this, and what her view was. And I just think this is such an important conversation to be had at the moment, where so many things, whether that's politics or the environment or how we deal with, you know, worldwide migration, all these things have so polarized society. And I think the book deals with this so well, because it's not taking, you know, a danger, or like a danger rather, that we know and that might then again polarize society, or already have polarized society, but instead he's taking this whole, you know, external thing that we can look at and take as a kind of simile or an analogy to the polarizing factors that we have in the world today. And I don't think he's offering any solutions to that. I don't think he's saying, well, and you should just all sit together and talk to each other and everything will be fine. That is not what Hank Green is saying. Or rather, that's not what the book is saying. But it's really, really, I think, illustrating really, really well the danger of just having this polarized world. And I absolutely love the book for this. I know that that is not the story of the book. I know the book is about the Carls and the craziness of internet fame and all that, but it just really, really, really inspired me to kind of make, you know, look at the polarizing factors and the polarizing factions rather in the world, and maybe explore a little bit about, you know, where I stand on things and whether I need to have a black and white view on things. And yeah, it's just been really, really fascinating. Well, it's been an absolutely remarkable thing, and it's been an absolutely remarkable read. And actually also, I'm super excited because in the town that I live in, there is actually a Nerdfighter group. And so we're going to meet up, I think, at the end of November and talk about an absolutely remarkable thing. And I'm so super excited about this. I'm actually also wondering, I might be making a video dedicated to an absolutely remarkable thing, in which I might give some more spoilers. But I will wait a little bit longer for this, just because, well, you might want to go read it. So these are all the books that I read in October. There are a few that I also started but haven't finished yet, but I'll be talking about them at a different time. I'm sure this is already a really long video. Let me know what the books were that you enjoyed this month, or if you read any of the ones that I mentioned. I would love to hear from you in the comments below. Alright, until next time, see you!